Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
That was Sarah. Could you tell? I tried to do my American accent. Hello, hello.
Oh, you're so cute. Welcome
so
to the
cute.
Mother Days, everybody.
Hey, welcome, guys. We are excited to be back with another episode. Sarah, what are we talking about today?
Well, today we are actually pulling from our little Rolodex of ideas from all of you Daisy listeners. And today we're going to talk about manifesting with your kids. I have a really fun follow-up story to the red string. If any of you listened to our episode with Rachel and Olivia on Broad Ideas, I talked about this New Year intention thing that I did and this red string. And so I have a follow-up to that, which is going to be really exciting.
We also wanted to dive into topics such as having a positive outlook with your kids. I think I'm so scarred by people saying, I'm a realist. I feel like I'm such an optimistic person, and I'd always have my sciencey friends be like, well, I'm a realist. And I'm like, wait, what does that mean? Does it mean my dreams have to be crushed? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to be talking about anxiety in children, mindfulness with kids, just talking about all that good stuff and also how we fold that into our own lives. So Can we please hear about this red string? I know the story. It is so profound that I was like, you need to share this on the podcast.
I know. Okay. So if you didn't listen to our episode on Broad Ideas,
with Rachel Bilson,
with Rachel Bilson and
Olivia Allen.
So what happened is that at the beginning of the year, I got this email blast. If anybody else follows Laura Lynn Jackson, she is the author of Signs. She actually wrote a book before that, but Signs is the one that I read and I loved. And I talked a little bit about it on our podcast that I started reading it. And then when I was like 7 pages in, this crazy thing happened where I had was trying to figure out what sign to ask my dad for, because the whole book is about creating your own language with the universe and to your people and your team of light on the other side. And so I was starting to read it and I was like, wow, this is really fascinating. I feel like my dad, if he was Earth side, he'd be like, oh, yeah, this is kind of silly. I was like, but now that he's on the other side, I'm sure he's also trying to figure out how to communicate with me, right? Mm-hmm. And he was a pastor. So, he believed in God and heaven and all of these things. So anyway, I was sitting there trying to figure out what to ask my dad for. And I was like, should I ask him for a butterfly or a bird? And I'm like all over the place with where I was asking. And I went to open my computer to send an email. And then my computer email was sitting in 2007. And I was like, that's weird. And so I started scrolling and it was yellow highlighted on this one email. And it, the way that they do spam. And it was an email from my dad from 2007. And I clicked on it and it said, hi, Sarah, I've been trying to reach you. Call me Dad. Ugh. And I was like, what? Oh my gosh, this is so crazy. I know. And so that was wild. And so I was like, okay, I'm hooked, right? And I signed up for Laura Lynn Jackson's newsletter and everything. And so at the beginning of the year, she sent out this really beautiful email that was just about manifesting your year. And, just everything was just very light and wonderful. And she talks about how write down the things from last year that didn't serve you, and then write down your intentions for this year, and then write down your team of light and ask them for a sign. And so I actually was thinking about it and I dreamt that I asked my team of light for a red string, to send me a red string. And I was like, okay, that's weird. Did I think that? Did I dream it? Did I actually ask for it? And I was like, it's so random. So I wrote it down in my brand new journal I bought because Teresa got a journal for Christmas from her husband. And I was like, I want a journal to manifest it. So I got my own. And so I wrote down in this journal my team of light. So it was like my dad, my brother, Megan, my doctor. And then next to it, I was like, I love you so much. And I know you're really busy up there and you got a lot of people to tend to, but I'm putting you on my team of light.
Oh,
and
bless.
then my dogs, just like all this, all these people. And underneath all of that, I wrote a red string and I circled it and put all these asterisks by it. And then 7 days later, I was sitting at a Mommy and Me class with my friend Anna, and there was this like orange like piece of plastic in the yard. And I looked at it and I was like, what's that? And Anna was like, are you thinking that's your red string? And I was like, oh no. And she's like, don't think about it. She's like, it'll come when it's supposed to come. And I was like, okay, you're right. I'm just going to let it go. The next day I get a package in the mail and it's a shirt, a white thermal that I ordered. And it's from this amazing brand that only makes white, black, and gray pieces. And so I pull out the shirt, I go to put it on. And as I'm putting it on, I was like, wait, what did I just see? And I turn it up inside out. And in the very bottom seam, sewn into only like about 3 inches of the bottom seam and with a little piece sticking out is a red string. Mic drop.
Oh my gosh. In a plain white thermal top with no red in it.
White thermal shirt. Yes, a plain white thermal shirt where the serger, if you know anything about sewing, because my mom was a sewer, where the serger like serges at the very bottom of the seam of the shirt, it's like serged into it for like 3 inches of the bottom. And then it's just kind of peeking out, like sticking out.
How
and
does
I've
that
washed the shirt
happen?
so many times. I know. I've washed the shirt so many times now. The red string is still there. So I see it every time I go to put it on. I'm like, the red string.
Oh
and
my
it's just
gosh.
crazy. And so I got this like, somebody was asking me like, what does it even mean? And I was like, it's just my connection to the other side. I'm just asked for this like connection. And I'm like, do you hear me when I'm speaking to you? It's just like this thing where I'm sort of affirming the connection to the other side. And as I go throughout this year, like as I'm journaling, as I'm sitting in this meditation, like that just made me feel so good to know that connection is there, if that makes sense.
And you're on the right path. I feel like Sarah a few years ago might have been like, oh, I don't know, like maybe just a coincidence.
Right.
I used to always try and chalk up these things as, oh, well, there's got to be some sort of scientific explanation behind it. And then when I finally let go and understood, like, you know what? None of us have all the answers of the universe.
That's right.
It's so vast and huge and epic, and it's just so expansive that, of course, there are millions upon millions of things that we can't quite grasp. And one of them is death. One of them is like, what's a soul, spirit, all these things. So I'm always saying, I'm open. I believe in any of it, all of it. It could all be possible. I even spoke to my dad the other day. I was like, Dad, because I've talked about Dad, last week on the podcast. I was talking about how my dad's like very scientific and he's a very smart academic man. And I was telling him about this job that I just got. And so this job is with a producer friend of mine who I worked with so many years ago. And she just kind of came into my mind in the last, I'd say in the last year. And I was like, I really, really, really want to work with her again. She's such a beautiful person. It's such a wonderful time. Like, I'm just going to manifest it. I'm going to like chuck it on my manifest board. And I was telling my dad this story. I had a bunch of girlfriends.
When you were telling your dad this story?
Like, I just had this weird feeling to tell him, and I started the story, and I was like, "Oh God, this is just going to be met with crickets, or my dad will do an eye roll or something." And that isn't what happened. So I got there. He was like, how's work? Tell me about this new movie. I looked up the producer, Teresa, and she's fantastic. And I was like, I know, Dad, I've got to tell you this crazy story. And it just sort of spilled out of me. Whereas I feel like a few years ago, I'd hold that very close to the chest and not share that with my dad and my stepmom.
Oh my God.
And I was like, look, I decided, this was about maybe 3 months ago, I hosted at my house all my girlfriends. I talk about them a lot, Sarah. We've got this like spiritual mums group in LA and we all were a part of this Mummy and Me group. We all went to the pump station together and it sort of morphed into this like mindfulness mummy group where we would go and meet with this therapist called Jennifer Wahlberger, and she would sit with us, and she actually wrote a book about sleep for children.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's called The Sleep Easy Solution. Anyway, so Jennifer Wahlberger would lead these sessions with these women, and everyone would just crack open and share everything that we were going through and navigating. And we'd talk about anxiety and depression and fear. And it was just this beautiful community of women just trying to get through parenthood and all the things that were being thrown at us. And it was such a wonderful once a month kind of thing. So we're all on a text thread, and the girls, a lot of my friends are sort of going through a few things, and someone just threw out, I just want to do a vision board night. And I was like, right, perfect. We'll do it at my house. I'll host it. And I led the girls through essentially a night of manifesting. And
I want to do that.
I know. Well, I am actually currently writing a course on manifesting, which is
amazing.
Yes, it's something that I've been working on. And I finally got the confidence to do it because I'm seeing that it's real. So many things are coming to fruition. So what I did was I had everyone come over, and we started with, similar to what you said, Sarah, about the book you were reading, a purging. So self-critical voice, that the voice that comes in and tells us that we're not good enough. And so we purged and we said all the things out loud, and then we wrote things down. We burnt them in the fire pit. We're like, no, those things aren't true about ourselves. And then we sat around, we started cutting out images and putting them on our board. And as we were doing that, I gave everyone a little journal to write, and everyone would write down what each picture meant to them and what they were doing. And so I focused on this producer. She was one of my main parts of my board that night. And at the end of the night, we ended up doing a share. So we'd all go around and we'd talk about our boards, and we had to talk in present tense, like this is happening. So I was like, I'm working with this person. It's incredible. It's a role that I'm so excited about and just takes things next level. I shit you not. The next morning, I get a text message from a number that I do not have saved in my phone. And it's the producer. And she's like, hey, Teresa, it's me, just checking. Are you going to be in Sydney anytime soon? And I was like, oh my God. In fact, I'm going to Sydney tonight. And then we found out that I was renting a house 3 streets away from her in Sydney.
Oh my God.
I was working on the Fall Guy 3 streets away, and she was, and then we just were having this conversation, and I was thinking in my head, oh my gosh, is this going to lead? Like, what is this? Like, are we just hanging out? Should I just tell her I really want to work with you? And then she was like, I have a script for you. And she sent me a script. I read it on the plane. I landed. I told her how much I loved the script. And now it's the next job I'm doing. So I started in a month and a half. I know. And it happened so quickly. And I have to think that's not just a coincidence.
No, it's not a coincidence. But how did your dad, so when you were telling your dad
this whole thing. and
what did he say?
He told me a story. He was like, well, I think there really is something to writing down your goals, writing down your things that you are trying to bring in. My dad's like, there is something to that, because he told me that back in the 1980s, my dad became a very successful gambler. So he used to gamble on horses and dog racing. And he came up with this really cool system of comparing horse statistics. And he actually sold this program because he was a computer programmer as well. But he wrote down everything that he was passionate about and that he felt that he really excelled in. And he's more like a mathematician, like what was the probability of these things becoming successful? So then he just picked gambling, which, by the way, I would say probably doesn't have a huge probability of success. And he put his everything into it. He truly believed in it, and it became a very successful professional gambler and made a lot of money from it, and then sold this program that he created. So he, in fact, had this reaction where he was like, I think there's something to it. And this is why I think there's something to it. This happened to me back in the 80s. And, you know, it happened.
Oh.
And it was just so interesting to have this narrative of like what I think his beliefs are. And then to have him totally pivot and to be like, yeah, wow, that's really interesting. And I even showed him my little manifest board that I had put as a screensaver on my phone.
Oh my gosh.
And he was like, I think that's very good, darling. So
oh,
wild,
that
guys.
is so crazy. Okay, so the story is insane.
Yeah.
I remember you writing me like when all of this was happening, because you and I were talking about manifesting and like all this stuff with our new year and like the, you know, what we were going to do. And then I was so blown away when she texted you, and now this is the movie that you're going to do right now. That is
dream
so crazy.
movie.
A dream
movie. And I wanted to just talk about, it's such an interesting thing. I feel like I'm coming out of my shell a bit more in terms of feeling confident enough to talk about how much I believe in this, because I truly think that so much of my life, even subconsciously, I have been manifesting. And now consciously I can look back and be like, wow, I can connect all the dots and realize where it came from. So I thought, wow, I just kind of knew to do that when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
But wouldn't it be so empowering as parents to be able to instill in our children the idea that their dreams can come true? And if they just believe and if they keep moving towards those goals, they can come true, instead of cutting like that tall poppy syndrome. Oh gosh, it's so rife here in Australia, where you sort of cut people down a little bit as they're growing up tall and feeling good about what they're achieving. There's this tendency in, a lot of it comes from the Australian media, to come in and sort of slice people down, cut them down at the legs, they say, like cut them at the knees and they fall. And I just want to say, like, to empower our children to think that anything at all is possible is such a beautiful way to help set them up to have a positive outlook. And researchers say children with a positive outlook end up becoming more successful, and they are happier.
That's right.
And when you look at the rates, it's like 5.8 million kids dealing with anxiety in the United States alone, and 2.7 million dealing with depression. Even if it's, you call it manifesting, you call it positivity, whatever it is, being optimistic. Gratitude, instilling that in your kids in such a young age is only going to set them up for success in their later years.
And look at what happened with Mark. Like, go back to our Mark episode and look at what happened with him. And he had a dream that he focused on, and this is what he was going to do. And he set his mind to it, and he made his dreams come true, from like coming from a place where he's living on the streets, you know, with his mom. And like, that's amazing. And so, and I think that, you know, the part that some people I think get sticky on is they're like, oh, well, you can't just like be like, well, this is what I want to happen, so I'm going to wait for it to happen. Like, that's not what it is. You know, you're showing your kids that like their dreams can come true, but you're also giving them a sort of guidebook of like how to do it. So if you were going to sit down with, you know, your children and say, let's talk about what you want to manifest for the year. And the way that I did it at the beginning of the year was like, I sat down with my kids and I was like, let's go around. And I sort of went off of Laura's, like Laura Lynn Jackson. I went off of it. One day we're going to get her on this podcast.
Yes,
One
we
day.
are. Let's manifest it, Sarah.
Let's manifest. Exactly. I love you, Laura. But I kind of used like her thing as a guide map with my kids. But I was just kind of like, you know, what was something last year that didn't serve you? And my son jumped right up and said, and I may have already shared this on here, but he immediately was like, well, actually, last year I felt like I just kept in every single morning I was delaying getting out of bed, and I knew it was time for me to get up, and I needed to get all of my stuff done, you know, because he unloads the dishwasher and he gets his like school uniform on and he feeds the dogs and like all this stuff. And he's like, I just kept delaying it. And then I end up like rushing around and running out of time, and it doesn't feel good. I want to let that go. And I want to get up as soon as I wake up in the morning. I want to get up. And I was like, wow, like that's amazing, you know? And so, and I had, you know, stuff stuff from last year that I wanted to let go of and things that just weren't serving me. And so I talked about it. And then Esme had hers. I don't remember what it was, but very funny. And then Winter said something herself, you know, and then we talked about things that we wanted to like, you know, set out for the year. And then we sat down and we talked about, you know, if we ever want to like move into a new house, what would that house look like? And I had everybody tell me like different parts of the house. What, you know, what would you like to see in
like
the
same
backyard?
house?
Yes. Oh, for sure.
Wow.
Everybody. Like I had, and it's funny because we all sort of, there's something different for every person that is meaningful. So for Wyatt, like, you know, he really wants a pool. And for Esme, she wants a room to share with her sister. And for me, I'm like, I kind of love the idea of this like big open kitchen that has like a breakfast nook, but also has a fireplace in it to where you can be cozy by the fireplace and like eat and have the kitchen, and it overlooks the backyard. And so that to me is just like this dreamy, cozy cooking. Everybody's playing. There's a fire. Like that whole vibe was so beautiful to me. And so I wrote that down. And then there's like stuff that Eric talked about. And then there was like this one Instagram that I follow all the time, Amber Interiors. And I was like, and I want it to look like an Amber Interiors ad. You know?
So good. And then you take the pictures, and like put it all together.
That's right. And so anyway, that's what I mean is that like giving them a little bit of a guide map, and you're not saying, okay, guys, we're going to sit down and manifest. It's like we're sitting down and doing this thing together, and here's how we do it. This is how we make our dreams come true. Because as we've discussed before, the universe like puts these things in front of you, and you know, it's either you take it, you work towards it, you fight for that goal or whatever it is, or you just kind of like let it pass you by because it's scary or it's out of reach or like whatever that your, you know, mind is telling you. So Tez, how do you do it with your kids? Lay it out.
Yeah. So I think you touched on something that I think is really important. When I've been so deep in the manifesting world, law of attraction world, because I've been writing this course. I've only just started. It's got 4 modules, and I've just like barely started module 1. But I think a lot of it is people are like, oh, whatever, that doesn't work. I just think about a new car I want and it just doesn't arrive. Like that defeats the purpose of what the law of attraction really is. And I always talk about this idea of the inspired action, taking inspired action. And if you want to go deep, 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 we always recommend the Law of Attraction Tribe podcast by Stephanie Keith. Sarah and I are a huge, huge fan of hers. But it's like, the universe will drop those little nuggets and you take them and you make the action, you take that action. For instance, how I really like Sarah, I wanted a new home, a bigger home, a home where everyone had their own bedroom. We were living in a house where, you know, one bedroom had 3 children sharing a bed. And I was like, no, I want to up level. I want something more. And my inspired action for that was going on to Redfin, the real estate site, finding a house that I like the look of, and actually physically going to the open house and looking around and feeling what it felt like room by room to be living in that house. And then sure enough, that ended up becoming my house, which is so wild. And another one of the...
To me, that sounds a little bit like you should write a course on manifesting now that you've told us about the house and also about the director, just saying. And I'm just going to slip a few things over for you to manifest for me.
Oh my goodness. But so with the kids, it's a word that we use a lot in our family. And I think a lot of people in our orbit reflect it back to us. So I was like, you guys manifest, you manifest. And so my kids have grown up hearing this word a lot.
Yes.
And it was probably not until about 1.5 years ago where we started talking about like, hey, what is manifesting? What do you believe in? I sort of explained it in a way where it's like just putting out into the universe like goodness. Just first and foremost, just being a good person. How can you like tap into your heart and your soul and be the kindest, best person you can be? So that's always been just this through line in our family. Like, let's just be good. Second, grateful. Let's be so grateful for everything that we have. And, you know, I remind my kids
Yes.
on a daily basis if they start sort of complaining about something. I'm like, guys, let's take a deep breath. Let's look around us. Let's look at the things that we have. And maybe we'll go into their room and look at the artwork that they've put up on the walls and like, oh, so grateful for your talent. So grateful for, you know, the cat Aslan, because the kids have been wanting another pet. And I'm like, but look at our beautiful pets that we already have. We have 2 gorgeous dogs. We have a cat. Like, let's be grateful. Some people don't even have pets.
But you don't have a bearded dragon.
We don't have a bearded dragon. We do have a snail called Gary. And Gary was found yesterday in the yard. And Mummy had to go and buy a whole aquarium for it and learn about how to look after snails. And now we've had Gary. And Gary went to school for show and tell with Poet. And she tried to take him again to school today. I was like, everyone's seen Gary. They were very excited by Gary yesterday. And I think it's time to leave Gary here. Actually, do you guys want to see Gary? He's right here.
Yeah,
we
want
show
to
you.
see
To the people who are watching, this is Gary.
Is it true that, oh, she doesn't have her headphones on. Okay, she's walked away. She's coming back. Okay.
This is Gary the snail. And
it's also just, that's an amazing name. Gary is an amazing name for a snail.
So funny. Where is Gary? Oh, Gary. Where's the Gaza?
Is it true that snails carry salmonella on their
you and Mark
shells?
Are seriously as bad as each other. He was like, don't touch the snail, don't let them. And I was like, I grew up holding like a million snails on my body. Like, we're not going to be the parents that's like, don't touch the snail. Oh my God. Do you know what? The moment Mark mentioned it, I was like, go away. You're not going to spoil her fun. She's got her. I was like, she can just wash her hands. She'll wash her hands after.
I have a lot of pictures of Esme carrying snails around, but I did look it up one time and I was like, oh my God. I know. Horrifying.
Probably. But anyway, so yeah, with the kids, it's just about really like keeping that open line of communication. They know their dad's story. They know that he was a little boy who was living in dilapidated homes and was homeless and lived in a car and had this really crazy life story and then became a movie star and a successful filmmaker and, you know, like got himself out of that situation. So my kids truly fundamentally believe that their dreams mean something. And it's just such a beautiful thing to instill in them. Bodhi right now, he believes that he's going to be a professional basketball player, and that's amazing. I want him to feel that. He can go for it. He wants to do more training. So he, in his own way, is trying to take the inspired action to meet that goal. He's like waking up early for his training. He's joined another team here in the Adelaide Hills because he just wants to keep it up. And I just think it's such a beautiful thing. Because, you know, life does like sometimes it can make you jaded and it can totally make you feel like you're feeling positive, you're feeling good about something, and then you hit a roadblock and you can be thrown off kilter and all of a sudden be like, oh, that's not going to happen anyway, so why should I even have that dream? You know, when people come in and be like, oh, just be a realist. I'm like, no, be a dreamist.
It's so true. And I do love, you know, that was a through line, I think, for the episode that we did with Mark as well. By the way, if you guys can hear rain, it's been pouring down rain in California and it's raining now and I'm snowing in an Airstream. So it sounds like it's raining on a tin can. That's what you're hearing. But I think a through line in his whole story that he told was gratitude. And, you know, we've talked about that a lot, but, you know, that throwing around that word gratitude, it's like, but if you really sit in that and go like, okay, just like he said in the episode, like, okay, the first thing that I can do is like say that I'm grateful, I'm breathing, I'm healthy, you know, I have my family that's around me. And so those are all things that you can sort of tap into. But when you really start all of it, all of this like manifesting or thinking about these positive intentions or sitting in mindfulness. And if you start thinking about the things that you're grateful for, it really puts you in a different place.
It does.
And for your kids too, you know, like they sit there with smiles on their faces talking about the things that they are grateful for. And a lot of the times it's like, things that are sort of unexpected. It's like, oh, you know, for winter, she's like, I really love my Mirabelle glasses, you know, or like, you know, like for Wyatt, and I know, me too.
That's so
And, you know,
cute.
Wyatt, he's like grateful for, you know, his like, he's on swim team and he's like so proud of it. And he had his first swim meet. I'm trying to figure out all the lingo for swim now because I didn't grow up with swim. We didn't even have swim at my school. And so anyway, like it's just really beautiful, those things that kind of come out of them. And then when you're talking about the things that you're wanting to set intentions for, or the things that are happening, or, you know, however you want to say that, like it's so nice to do that and sort of set it up as a family and talk about it as a family.
Yeah. And I think that it gives children something to be passionate about, to really think about the things that like make them feel good. And we hear so much, and maybe there's people listening being like, I don't feel really passionate about the job that I'm in. I mean, we hear that time and time again. And I think having just that work ethic and having that support for your kids from such a young age, to know that you don't have to be in a job that makes you miserable. You don't have to. You can really, from such a young age, lean into the things that light you up, that make you feel excited. And whatever that may be, you know, for Forrest right now, like he really loves drumming. Like drumming is a thing. Drumming and art are his things. And so he's like, I want to be an artist when I'm older. I want to be an artist. And I was like, and you will be an artist. If he takes the steps towards reaching that goal, he will become that. And they really believe in that. And it's so hard because life can sort of take that optimism away from you because of a series of events. And I just, I think starting from such a young age to think about doing daily affirmations with your kids and meditating with your children, and having them just even in the schoolyard, looking around. And if I call them spirit poppers, I've talked about it before. If there's like a kid who's being a spirit popper to another kid who has a big belief, or they come out and they try something a little bit left of center, and, you know, maybe they're really interested in something that might not be quote unquote the cool thing at the school.
Yeah.
I hate the spirit poppers that come in and like they pop the balloon, they pop your spirit, and they're like, oh, well, that sucks. That's boring. You're a loser. Like that's crap. Whatever it is, it starts in the schoolyard. So if we are teaching our children to be as kind as possible and to be the yes and people, then that's amazing. Like Bodhi was saying the other day, there's like a little kid, a little dude at his school who loves dancing. He just loves dancing. He's passionate about it. He does jazz. He does this. He does that. And Bodhi was like, oh, I'm pretty sure some of the kids were teasing him about it. And I was like, yeah. And then you get to be the kid that's like, that is so cool. I love that you do that. I love that. Makes you really happy. That's so great. You know what makes me happy? Basketball makes me happy. Like, show me some of your moves. Like, wow, that's so cool. I'll show you some of mine. Like, I was like, you get to be that kid. And then that will affect change in your school, in your friendship group. And there was like a war, they were calling it a war going on in his year level. And Bodhi, like, it's hard because like we dip in and out of schools depending on where we are. So he hadn't been at school for a few months, and he came back home and he was like, oh, Mum, like, a lot of the kids aren't friends anymore. Something happened when I was gone, and there's been this big rift, and we were all in the teacher's office and we were all trying to talk about how to repair. And I was like, oh my gosh, what a great opportunity be. Like you get to be the glue that brings everyone back together, because you are the one that pops in and out. So go in there and be like, oh my gosh, we're better together. We're stronger together. You love being friends with both gangs. I was like, bring it together. So I had I said on Monday, go in there and be like, I'm going to start a truce. I'm going to do a truce. I'm going to bring them together, and this is what we're going to do. And I told him, Mark and I gave him some language to use with the kids on why they should come together. And he used the language, and I picked him up from school, and I was so excited to hear how it went. And I got a message from the mum of one of the kids who was feeling bullied by this situation.
Aww.
And she was like, we had months of like interventions with the teachers and the principal, and then Bodhi comes in and is like, hey guys, let's just all be friends. Like, we're better together. We're stronger together. And I was like, oh my gosh, he used the language, and they're all just hanging out. And I was like, cool. That is such a great opportunity. And you can continue that throughout your life. Just always looking for those ways to like just bring people together and uplift them rather than cut them down or tell them that their dreams are unachievable, because that's not true.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That is so beautiful. What an amazing story. And it makes me think of Esme. There's been some back and forth with some kids in her class, and we have a lot of conversations about, sitting down and having a talk with, some kids get upset if you're playing with one kid and another kid who's your friend is like, but I don't want you to play with that person. I just want you to play with me. And Esme came to us one day and she's like, I need to have a meeting with my teacher. And I was like, okay. And so we sat down. I was like, she wants to have a meeting with you? And she wants me there. And so she sits down and she's like, I told such and such friend, like, just because I'm playing with this person doesn't mean that I don't love you. I can play with her and I can also play with you, and I love you both. But if you tell me that I can't play with her, then that makes me sad and that makes her sad. And so she's like telling me what she's saying. And I'm like, I feel like this is a conversation that I've had with her at home about siblings or like whatever it is, and you kind of see that the like language that you're using with them about, just like how you're trying to communicate, how it transfers over. And so I'm sitting in this like meeting with her and her teacher, and I'm hearing her say this, and I'm like, I feel like her and Eric had this talk recently, and she's like carrying this language over, and it's so beautiful. And I'm like getting misty, and but it's like it's so nice to see that even at kindergarten when they can sit there and go like, just because I'm doing this doesn't mean that I don't love you. And I want you to know that. And anyway, it was just so cute. And that Bodhi story made me think of it.
Yeah, it's so beautiful, but it's on us, isn't it, really, as parents to instill these things in our children. And there are lots of really wonderful ways that you can do it. There's this, if you guys go on to either Spotify or Apple Music, there's this great kids guided meditation stories, which is so amazing.
That's right. And told me about that.
Yeah, it's so good. So it's called the New Horizon Holistic Center, and they have about 8 or 9 different albums with these wonderful stories. And we actually use a lot of them to help our kids go to sleep. But it's about gratitude and presence, and it's teaching like really beautiful stories to kids in a way that's palatable for young children. And we've been listening to them for about 4 or 5 years. The woman's voice is like, it's like a lullaby. And our kids love it. It's just something that they really enjoy. And I feel like the messaging is so sweet. And even if you can find little moments in your day to fold in a bit of mindfulness like this, whether it's a meditation at the end of the night to help calm them down and get them ready to go to bed, or if it's doing some deep breathing. I know Mark's mum used to do affirmations with him, and they would write them together. I think that's, because we're seeing such a spike in anxiety with children, anxiety is about fear, about worrying about the future. And I think ensuring that kids can just be moment to moment, which kids should be. I mean, it's us adults that like let our minds run away with us, but we're seeing it happening more and more in our children. And if we can just teach them that gift of being present, I think that comes from just really like looking around their environment and seeing what's in front of them and their siblings and all the wonderful things that they have currently. It might help with the fear. And also communicating. If, Bodhi's got sleepaway camp coming up in 4 nights, and he was not in 4 nights, for 4 nights, and he's going to be sleeping away from us for that long period of time without us around and without his siblings. And he's like nervous about who's going to be in his dormitory. He's like, I wrote down these friends, but what if they're not going to be in there? And if I don't, and so we were like, okay, let's get to the root of this worry. Like what will happen? Let's really like get beneath the worry here. And what could the scenario look like? And we sort of broke it down what the issue was. And he was like, oh, well, it would actually be fine if I ended up with these guys because like they're really fun and actually they're quite fun in this way. And these guys are a little bit, and I feel like I'd probably get to sleep earlier if I was with these guys. And so I was like, oh my gosh. So his feelings dissipated because we were able to just sit and be present and be like, hang on, let's just hold a beat before our mind runs away. Like, let's just like get beneath the feelings here. What are they? Oh, I see what's going on with you. And then checking in afterwards, like, how are you feeling about that now? And he was like, I feel really good and I'm so excited about camp, which is wonderful.
Yes.
And so then, of course, leads us back into
doing the body
communication.
Doing that body check, like head to toe, like how is my head? How is my, body? How are my arms? How are my shoulders? Am I relaxed? And like walking them through that little body check. And I think that's so important. And you're so right about there's so many kids that have anxiety. And if we're not able to sit down and have a conversation with them about it, imagine what happens with our own anxiety. Like for me, there was one morning when I was journaling, even just like in January, and I remember I was looking back in my journal to read something to Teresa, and I saw this like little line that I wrote, which was, some mornings I wake up and I have anxiety the moment I wake up. And I don't know why. And so, and that was like the first thing in my journal. And I think writing that down even was releasing. I was like saying it out loud and saying, okay, I'm feeling anxious. I've woken up with this feeling. I don't know if it's like lack of sleep or if it has something to do with dreaming or leftover stuff from yesterday, whatever it is. Like usually when you wake up in the morning, you feel pretty good. I woke up feeling anxious. And some mornings I feel that way, but then I need to like talk about it, write it down, check in with my body, do some deep breaths, rest, listen to, meditation music for 10 minutes and like try to let some of that go, do my breathing. And then it really subsides. And, if we're able to even do that with kids, like that's such a beautiful thing. Before COVID, Wyatt and I were trying to find time to spend just him and I together. This is like before Winter was born. And so in the mornings, he and I actually woke up really early before Esme, and the sun would be coming up, and we did tea ceremony together. And so he would actually do the tea ceremony, and he would like, I would pour the hot water for him, but then he would pour it over the leaves, and he would like clean the bowls. And then Nikki Reed actually taught him how to do it. And then he poured tea for him and I, and then we would sit there together and we would just have a moment in the morning before we were rushing out to go to school where we would just talk. And it was like a, 10-minute thing. It wasn't like a huge production, but it was special to the both of us. And I often think back to that time of like how relaxing that was and how nice and sweet. And it was entering your day in such a peaceful way, watching the sun come up with my little kid. And so I do feel like that helps to calm the nervous system as well, is like having a little bit of a moment in the morning and sort of setting this intention for the day.
That's so true. And I feel like so many people listening will be like, oh my gosh, my mornings are so rushed. Like we're making school lunches and we're trying to get them out the door on time. And then in the car, it's like, go, go, go. Yep. And I actually hate feeling like that. I really do not like
it's the worst.
The rush. Like, come on, guys. And the nag, like, why isn't your shoes? Come on, put your shoes on. Like, you haven't got your socks on. Like,
so bad.
This morning, Bodhi, like, was playing with his Pokemon cards. And I was like, dude, we're going to be so late. Like, you're not even dressed yet. But then it's like that sort of like heightened energy, which also doesn't set them up for a good day.
No.
But luckily, we have a 40-minute commute to get to school in Australia, and then 45 to an hour commute in America to an American school. But I can use that time to reset. If anything's felt like the nervous system's like, go, 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 like so much adrenaline pumping, we can use that time to reset with our kids. You can put it on a really like calming meditation. You can listen to music that feels really good, or even better yet, which I like to do, is just turn everything off and just like have a check-in with your kids.
Yeah.
What are you excited about? What's going on at school? Like, tell me about that. And just like, how are you feeling? Are you happy? What are your favorite things at the moment? What's hard at the moment? So there are so many ways that we can communicate with our children and start to fold in this mindfulness as a part of their routine, and then talk to them about their dreams and how wonderful and how like valid their dreams are and how important they are, and how we can take all these little baby steps towards achieving those things.
Oh, I love that. That is so amazing. Okay, I want to sign up first, be first in line for your course, your manifesting course. I'm sure there's a lot of people here who feel the same. So we can't wait to hear the details of where that's coming out and when that's happening.
Thanks,
Daisies, thank you so much for this amazing topic and idea. And, we really wanted to incorporate and not just talk about manifesting, for ourselves, but also just like how that can help play into our children and their dreams and their goals, and this whole idea of just sitting in gratitude and helping through some of these big feelings that we have. So thank you guys for this idea. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.